Hi everyone. I'm honored to introduce the guest for today, Professor K Patra sir. He taught us many ECE courses, was my favorite professor, and was also my final year project guide. The project he gave me was my first exposure to neural networks and machine learning some 16 years ago. It involved factories, machines, sensors, real-time streaming data, digital signal processors, and AI, all ingredients of a great business idea right there. But I was too naive back then to sort of realize that. Coming to his own career, he completed BSc Engineering in Electrical Electronics and Communication in 1986 from Sambalpur University, and then joined DRDO as a scientist. After spending 3 years in DRDO, he switched over to academics and teaching and joined NIT Rourkela as an associate professor. Along with teaching, he also finished his MTech from NIT Rourkela and PhD in electrical engineering from University of Edinburgh. He continued with NIT Rourkela, rising the ranks and guiding students like us till 2017, post which he joined IIIT Vadodara as a professor and director, a role he continues to be in till date. So thanks a lot for agreeing for this interactive session. An academician and administrator's perspective was missing so far, which we hope to get today. So thanks a lot, sir.
Thanks, Abhishek, for this opportunity to share my experience with you people. And it's always nice to work with young people. And when we're teaching environment, we feel young because we see young people all around.
Yeah.
That is always a bonus in our job profile.
Yep. Okay. Yep. So take us to your childhood. Where did you grow up?
I'll be referring to my write-up that I have made. So it's not completely extempore. Well, I was born in a small village near Bhubaneswar, about 60-70 kilometers from Bhubaneswar. This place was famous for one incident of the British time, where a British officer whose name was Major Bazalgette was murdered by the freedom fighters. If you do a Google on Bazalgette, you'll find host of information and host of news on him. And it's close to my village that he was murdered. And my grandfathers tell me, my grandfather and his brothers and cousins tell me that after that murder, the whole of village became a ghost village. Only ladies used to stay, all the male used to go and stay in jungle for days, come back in the night, meet people and then go back again. That was how it happened at that time. My father studied from the village school. Family was not very rich, though my great-grandparents were slightly richer. But then my father moved to Rourkela to take up a job in the Rourkela steel plant. And with his qualification, he had completed his metric at that time. He got a clerical position and he continued taking that job. And what I did was, we were lower middle class or a lower class. Today, by today's standard, it's lower class, but at that time I would call it as lower middle class because we had a steady income flowing, and then it was a government public sector company. Salaries were not very bad, but then there were responsibilities back at home. I read in a school which was funded by the Steel Plant of India, Steel Plant of Rourkela. They were typical sales schools. Those who are from Rourkela in your batch, they would be knowing that. And then after class 5, I moved to Bhubaneswar and joined Sainik School Bhubaneswar. In fact, one of my friends wanted to go there. He informed, and then we appeared. He didn't get selected, but then I got through. So it was like that. The school was an English medium school, a residential school, and it was affordable by the family. That's why I could go there. And the school taught me, because it was Sainik School, it taught me to be disciplined, independent, and it guided considerably in my life. It made me pretty independent. And that's how I landed up at different places. My luck drives me. I don't think anything else drives me. There are things that happen suddenly and then things change. That's how it is.
So when did you decide to take up engineering? And then was there any specific reason in choosing electrical, electronics and communication, or it just happened by chance?
Okay. Engineering as such, staying in Rourkela, you always see the steel plant, you see the smoke coming out of the blast furnace chimneys and all that. And I had a few relatives who had completed engineering from NIT Rourkela only. One of my uncles, who was our neighbor in the village, he was the second batch BTech in civil engineering. Plus, I had another relative. So we have been, from my childhood, I have seen some engineers who used to work. So that fascinated me towards engineering. My maths performance was good. So that's another reason why I thought engineering would be a good choice. At our time, in fact, it was difficult to get into engineering as such. The whole state of Odisha had about 1,000 engineering college seats. That's all. 1,000 only. Today, Bhubaneswar has about 10,000 and Odisha would be having 30-40,000 seats in the state. But whole of Odisha had 1,000 seats and whole of India as a country probably had 10,000, 20 or 30, 40,000 engineering seats in all. Job opportunities were limited. I got a chance to read at UC Burla, which is now called VSSUT. Professor Maji happens to be the VC currently. He's the professor from computer science department at NIT. At that time, the selection processes and all that were very different. We were very immature. My parents didn't know much about it, but knew, yes, you should do engineering. That's a good field to study. And you have a capability to do that. And I got electronics and communication and I just took it and studied. That's how it went.
I see, sir. Sir, you were one of our favorite professors. You have very unique style of teaching, very different from all other professors. You used to use slide in those days. If you go back to your engineering days, you remember a professor whom you admired a lot, and when you sort of got into teaching, did he or she act as an inspiration to you to sort of follow the same style of teaching? So tell us a little bit about your favorite professor.
Okay. Our college was, when I say UC Burla, our college was not very, very resourceful. We had, but one thing that happened was teaching was good. And at that time, hardly anybody was looking into research as a field in teaching professors. So everybody dedicated themselves to the teaching activity. Electronics was new. The department had very few teachers in the sense that in all categories, looking from lecturers to professors. Always there were 50% of the posts vacant. When I joined electronics and communication engineering, electronics and telecommunication engineering to be more accurate, everybody had a apprehension that what are we going to do? Nobody heard about it. Computer science was still unheard of. So we used to go to our professor and say, sir, electrical students and electronic and civil students will get into state government, mechanical will get into industries. What are we going to do? He gave us a nice statement. He said, you see, I don't know where you are going. But one thing I know is there are 4 posts vacant in my department. Any of my graduate, he comes and says that, sir, I want to join the department. I'll take him immediately. And till now, I am unable to find one who is coming to join that. So rest assured, everybody is going to get a job. You don't have to worry much. Remember, at that time, education was primarily to get a job. Job satisfaction came next. Looking at category of jobs and all those things were much still further in distance. Coming to teachers, I had few interesting teachers. 2 of them, many of you know, Professor Ganapati Panda and Professor G.S. Rath.
Yep.
And other was Professor K Patra. Professor Ganapati Panda taught us just for 1 semester, then he went on a postdoctoral studies. He would tell great things and boost you to a higher level so that you want to achieve higher. Professor G.S. Rath, as usual, his numericals were very strong, fundamentals were very strong. Any subject, any doubt you ask him, he would clarify.
Yep.
Then we had Professor K Patra, who was a professor at that time. Professor Panda and Professor Rath were readers at that time. Professor K Patra was the professor. He can teach a course in 1 class and he can teach a course, 1 full course in 100 lectures also. He had that capability. So he drew beautiful circuit diagrams to describe very easily how things work in electronic circuit. These are the three people I remember quite vividly in the department. Excluding them, Burla had some of the great professors in electrical engineering. We had a Professor Griwal, then we had a professor called Tushti. They are great people who were really great in teaching style and their teaching methodology. Not much of a methodology, but their fundamentals of the sound fundamental of the basic stuff was very strong. Any numerical you come to them, they'll solve it and give you the solution. That was really great with them, all the people.
I had the great fortune of being taught by Panda sir as well as Rat sir. All the communication courses were sort of being led by
Honda sir.
and then Rat sir was for, I remember there was something on network
Network theory.
network theory.
Network analysis, synthesis, network theory.
Yes, yes. And cryptography. It was probably an elective that he used to take.
Okay, you had a cryptography as elective at that time. That's a
Yeah.
good thing. Okay.
Yes. So he used to take that as well. Yeah, so I have had the fortune of knowing both of them, and I can totally agree, with everything that you have said. They were great professors. Sir, please tell us a little bit about your DRDO days. How did that happen? How did you get a job there? And later on, you sort of went for MTech, PhD. So why not straight into say higher studies? And I also have a question related to why did you choose MTech and then not say MS? Because your PhD is from a foreign university. So what was
okay? Interesting part. As I said, my life drives me. I don't drive it. When I was in my final year in Burla, we hardly had any campus interviews, any company coming for a campus interview. But our batch was the first batch when we had two companies or two recruiters coming for a campus interview. One of them was Kodak Television. Television as an industry was growing massively at that time. And the other was DRDO. In fact, DRDO started the integrated test range, which was that time called as interim test range at Chandipur, Odisha, to test missiles. And because they did not have sufficient scientists to take their work forward, they got a special approval to do a recruitment through campus interview. They picked up few colleges close to the place. So one was IIT Kharagpur, one was my college Burla. They conducted a placement, and we'll never forget that placement interview process and all that, because the interview started around 8 o'clock for the batch, 9 o'clock after dinner. After their dinner, they traveled, reached, had their dinner, got freshened up, and then they started the interview. And it ended at 2 o'clock in the morning. We all went to our hostel after our interview, but in the next morning, there was a sleep. A PN came with a sleep with 4 names, says that the principal is calling you for. So we thought, yes, probably it's our day. And we were handed over the appointment letters. So it's like that. Now we were almost like the second batch joining there. We had another group of scientists, young scientists, who had joined a few months before. And when we joined, there was one table, one bench, one chair, and one room office. The whole of test range had that. Then we saw it grow. In 1988, we moved to the new complex, which is the actual range complex. At that time, it was under construction. So we moved there, and our responsibility was to make sure that Agni missile could be launched in 1989. And we worked towards that. During that time, there are many things that happened, but few things I will narrate. I got an opportunity to work with some of the brightest people in defense R&D. Some of them I'm still in contact, at least one of them I'm still in contact. And we got a chance to work on some of the unseen technologies at that time. I got a chance to work on optical fiber communication. I got a chance to work on data communication, closed circuit television, I even was a part of integrating the data in a control center where data from all sorts of sensors and all sorts of instruments come, and then they get displayed in the control mechanism where the VIPs would sit down and see everything coming up. And you have seen that in the ISRO launches. You have seen Prime Minister sits there and all that. So
Yep.
that what they see, we were integrating that for DRDO missile program. Very interesting, really, and very high-end technology. I was also fortunate to meet Dr. Abdul Kalam.
I
That
was
time he
about
was
to
the
ask you the moment you started.
that time he was the director of DRDL. One very interesting part was whenever he used to come to Chandipur or Baleswar for evaluating the readiness of the range to do the first testing of Agni missile, he would finish the official formality. There would be typically a dinner in the evening in the DRDO style. There would be drinks and everything. Now he was a teetotaler. Now what he would do is he would leave the senior people aside. He will come out of that. He will come and sit down or stand and talk with all these junior level scientists below the age of 25. He will not talk with anyone who is above 30.
That's so he was called the people's president, right? I mean, that's
Yeah, so he would talk to us, he would ask inquisitive questions, he would answer all that. It was really interesting to talk to him, and everybody knows that now. In fact, at that time, it was the beginning for people to know him. Then, when he became president, these things became got a lot of visibility. But then we could see at that time how nicely he could mingle with young mass and basically simply motivate them to do things and work strongly. So that is one. In fact, I moved to Rourkela just for the family requirements. There are some difficulties in the family in a way. My father had some health issues and all that, but then I got a chance to work in NIT Rourkela as a teaching, just with a BTech, and I joined. After I joined Rourkela, I joined with a BTech. So in teaching, I knew or I understood that BTech is no deal. One has to complete higher studies and complete PhD. So at that time, the NIT Rourkela academic ecosystem was very different. It was a university-based system under the same Sambalpur University. Basically, the class timing were 8 in the morning till 4:15 in the evening. And after 4:15 in the evening, the campus got deserted. There would be 8 to 10 people in the whole campus, forgetting just leaving out the student. The academic area would have 8 to 10 people. And I usually stayed late. We had Bhanumurthy, many of you may not be knowing, but he was another faculty in the department. B. Bhanumurthy, me, Professor Panda, some other people would be there talking, going for tea, discussing something or doing something. Then I started in the teaching only. After I joined, I joined for MTech program, completed my MTech, and then it moved towards higher and higher. So, but what I was seeing, the NIT Rourkela academic ecosystem has changed considerably from the time I joined in '89, which was little after my graduation or BTech at the time, even when I was a student. Primary thing was only BTech. MTech, some people did, but it was more of a relaxed environment. Things changed after 2002, around 2002. Two factors. One is all RECs were made NIT.
Yep.
That happened during the NDA first government that was formed around that time, and I think Murli Manohar Joshiji was the education minister at that time. All institutes became NIT.
Yep.
That is first point. And because the institutes became NIT, the funding came from center. There is better funding, infrastructure improvement. But along with that, another factor happened, and that was introduction of OBC reservation. And because of introduction of OBC reservation, the seats and NITs or RECs had to be increased in a phased manner by 50% in a period of 3 years. And I think you people were within that period where the increase was going on.
Yep.
So the infrastructure had to be enhanced, and that is where there was a very high funding available from government. Those institutes who could utilize the fund were benefited, and our institute at that time was one of those. Professor Sarangi had the really the art of utilizing funds and creating infrastructure. I consider myself lucky to be part of the REC to NIT transformation, and NIT, what it was till till the time I was there, I was a part of the transformation almost continuously. And my contribution was initially it started as the in charge of the campus network. So I planned the campus network initially when it started, the campus LAN. The hostels had a small cyber cafe with
Yes.
thin clients installed.
And all, yes.
Internet was available in hostels.
Yes.
We had a server infrastructure, mailing system, and all that came up under my supervision.
Yep.
And it was all, I had 100% support from Professor Sarangi at that time. Then from there, things have moved up and up and up. So that was a period of about 15 years I was involved in these activities. Now, what happened with our department? Initially, our department is a minor department, a small department with just 30 BTech students. We did not even have a MTech program. Very late, around 99, 2000, we started a MTech program in a self-finance manner. But then when we became NIT, departmental transformation started. From one BTech program, we had two BTech programs.
Yep.
Electronics communication came in, electronics instrumentation was there from the beginning. Yep. Then we got one by one, we started to have multiple MTech programs, and currently department has got 5 or 6 MTech programs. When I came, it was 4. Subsequently, another 1 or 2 have been added. One is added, I think second one was added or not, I don't remember. So there are at least 5 MTech programs. PhD became a very strong factor. Professor Sarangi said every faculty can have 2 PhD scholars. So we have moved from a time where people didn't know what is PhD and many faculty were not non-PhD. There came a time when everybody were permitted to have 2 PhD scholars. So we were lucky because I had the PhD from Edinburgh University. We were ready and hungry to supervise PhDs. We immediately got PhD scholars, started to supervise. The research changed. Everything changed from that point. Excellent. And really, the last 2 decades have seen large transformation in the NIT system.
Yep. So what are all your research areas of interest? And at that time, over the years and now?
My research areas haven't changed much. When I started my MTech at Rourkela, I was a faculty, and then I started my MTech program. We had a 1-year project work in the MTech. So I worked on channel equalization, and it was under Professor Ganapati Panda. Professor Ganapati Panda had done a lot of work on this topic. So at that time, it was between 1989 to 1991, 92, 93, around that time. It started in 1989 May. It went up to 92. So I worked on channel equalization using artificial neural networks. So that was the beginning when neural network had started. You'll find that early papers of neural networks got published around 1986, 87, and that. Not many books were available. When I went to IIT Delhi, I got some books photocopied and came back. Got some books which were purchased for library, photocopied them and used them. So I started to use neural networks in channel equalization, which was for 2G communication primarily. It started in that way. After my MTech, I went to Edinburgh University for PhD. There I looked at another side of it, which was fuzzy network and neurofuzzy systems, again in channel equalization, which was more like 2G. I remember when I was doing my PhD, it was between 95 to 98, 1G curtain started to fall.
Yep.
2G became the de facto standard. In fact, it so happened that on the streets of Edinburgh, you could see vendors selling mobile phones for very cheap cost. They would sell these mobile phones for 10 to 20 pounds. Then when you ask the professor, sir, these mobiles are so cheap, should we buy one? He said, well, don't buy them because 2G standard is coming. And yep, when 2G standard comes, 1G you cannot use because the whole standard is going to digital from analog. So don't buy them. From there, we have moved to a condition where we are looking at 5G
allowed SMS, right? 1G did not allow SMS or
1G did not have SMS. 1G even did not have data transmission. 1G was a full analog system.
Fully analog.
2G started with a digital system. It had SMS, but later on it brought in what is called a GPRS. GPRS was for data communication. You could connect your computer with that and connect your remote terminal in digital connection. And the voice that was transmitted was in digital domain in ones and zeros. The mobile would convert your voice, analog voice, to ones and zeros and transmit them as ones and zeros. But in 1G, everything was as analog as you see in the FM radio or the AM radio system.
Yep.
That's how it is. And now we are on the horizon of implementation of 5G in India, and 6G may not be very far. So technology has taken us quite a long distance. Year 2000, almost 2000, 2001 saw the incoming of 3G. When 3G started in India, just a little later. But then things changed. 2000, I think it was 2016, 15, we had the 4G coming in. When 3G was maturing, we had 4G, which was a disruptive technology brought in by Reliance Jio. Yeah. And now we are looking at 5G. I think India is playing a larger role in 5G communication. And my research area have been with around that mostly. But there have been other fields like embedded systems, some amount related to VLSI, something related to AI and all that.
Sir, I have also interviewed Sandeep Ranjan Das, sir. He is from NIT Rourkela, Civil Engineering, 1978 batch. He was actually the first employee of Hutch. He was the CEO of Hutch paging business.
Okay.
And then he was also the CEO of Hutch telecom business. And he was the person who sort of grew Hutch from, zero subscriber to, 25 million subscriber by the time he left in 2006. He then
Hutch became Vodafone in India later on.
Exactly. It was bought by Vodafone for $22 billion. Yeah. And he was the one person instrumental in doing that.
Okay, that's interesting to know.
Right. And then he went to Malaysia and he was leading the largest telecommunication company there, Maxim Berhad. So good that all the dots are connecting, because I interviewed him. That will also get published. Okay. And then I'm interviewing you today. So why neural network? I mean, at that time, neural network, wasn't that successful. Why not say other machine learning techniques?
Okay, when you look at the academic environment finds it very difficult to work in hardware technology which is developing some hardware. And particularly being in a place like Odisha, that was a bigger challenge. You had less funding and all that. So we could not buy hardware to work on those. VLSI was not existing. VLSI came after that. Around 2002, 2003, VLSI started to move up in the ladder. So that time we looked at what are the burning problems, what are the new research areas. We found there some of the articles were being published in neural network. Okay. And some people had worked on this. So we thought, why not use the same thing in a communication environment, and it worked in that sense.
Yep. Sir, please tell us about your teaching philosophy and, the course you enjoy teaching the most. How do you sort of make student fall in love with the subject and then sort of motivate them? And what are some of the challenges as a teacher?
Okay. If we look at teaching at an engineering institution, at the time when I graduated, it was never considered to be a career option and a rewarding option. It is always considered as a chalta hai type business. Okay. Now, what I found, teaching had good challenges. Now, first thing that you do, you get a satisfaction is you are building the career of large number of young individuals who would be the future of the country or future of the world, and who would be the forefront of doing development for this world. And I feel happy that we are part of this build system where we are part of building the career of many young people. And I hope they are doing well and many of them are benefited by it. Another part, the important part or the important work that one needs to do is to connect with the students. One is to connect with students. In a class when we teach, we must realize looking at the face of the students, whether the students are understanding what I'm trying to convey or they're not understanding. In a class, I have seen there will be 5 to 10% students, they understand anything and everything. There are 5 to 10% who never try to understand or they will like to understand. But then if you can take the remaining 80% to 90% of the students along with you, you made your difference. You made the difference. And that has been my philosophy of teaching. And what teaching does is it creates something new in the sense it empowers people to be at a superior position. Now, every job has its own uh, challenges and risks and assets, I would say. Teaching is one where you are creating lives of people and you are affecting lives of people directly for their future generations.
Yep.
If I teach well to a group of students and they do well in their life, their generations change. Not only that they have changed, they change, their children change, and children's children change. It changes a generation of people in that. So I think that is what brings in the added responsibility and charm in teaching. I think the main thing is we have to connect to students, make sure they improve their life, and make a change in the life of many people through that.
That's
I put it in that.
that's such a good thought, sir. I can tell about myself. You know, when I got into NIT Rourkela, I knew nothing about programming. The first sort of in first semester we had C, and then we had to write very simple programs. I had sort of memorized it for the mid sem. You know, I didn't even had that level of understanding that, you know, how to think about logic, how to write codes, right? And then probably, I don't know, in second or third year you had this object oriented programming.
Third semester.
Yes, yes, which you used to take. And by that, I remember I got an EXer in that course. And it must be because of the way you used to teach. And I also remember that in the practical, you had this um, thing that the person who will complete the program the fastest, and if it works fine, it runs fine, the output is right, then you will give him some +5 marks or something that can be adjusted against, say, whatever I score in theory, right? And I was the one who sort of completed it first, and it was fine. So I had that grace marks as well to sort of use on the
No, it's
theory.
not a grace mark, it's a credit mark.
It's yes, it's not the grace mark, right.
Because very often we find after 10% or 20% students complete, others start to copy it.
Yes, yes.
That's a principle I follow.
You know, so from knowing nothing to sort of feeling programming as something of my own, then to go into industry and work as a software developer with a lot of confidence. And then I got into data science, but data science also requires a lot of programming, right? And I was always confident about programming and that being my strength. And that mainly came from, you know, something that you taught, very different style of teaching, as I said, with slides, etc. And a very different book used to sort of prescribe to us. Robert Laffour, I remember. I generally haven't seen a lot of professors telling or using that book to teach C++. So tell us about, you know, for example, the use of slides. So are you always sort of looking for what technology can I use for classroom teaching? And how have things evolved in the last 16 years since I have been in college? And how do you see it further evolving, the whole classroom teaching?
Okay, if you come to teaching, many people take it as a duty. Many people think it's a duty to be delivered. I don't consider it like that. It's a duty to be delivered, no doubt. That's the bottom part of it. But the main thing is, since I'm trying to build the career of individuals and make a change in their life, I must do it in such a way that the individuals are benefited. So, using audiovisual tools in a way, I'll generalize it as audio-visual tool. Of course, there are little audio, but mostly visual tools. What I found was, there is one way I could write the program on the board and describe it. But then if I write it on the board, it would take me, maybe I can just discuss 2 programs in a class. But if I use the slides or transparencies or some sort of audio visual tool, I don't have to spend that time writing on the board. And I can spend that time in making the fundamentals clear, teaching students how to do it, discussing examples. So that has been my motto of teaching always. And another factor I find in a class, typically a class would have diverse combination of social, cultural, economical, intellectual background students. And the understanding of each student is different from other. It's important to make sure that at least the 80% of the students understand what you teach. And it can be clearly made out from the faces of students. When you look at the faces, you can clearly make out something is they have understood or something they have not understood. So once you follow these 2 rules, teaching becomes easy. And students also understand it and they learn it. In fact, if I look at my time of teaching, it has changed considerably. If I look at I moved to teaching in 1989. At that time, programming was hardly there, computer programming. We always did things with in the laboratory. Students had to be taught in the lab, and we all did that. And even some of the students of first, second, and third batch are still in contact with me. They're on my Facebook chat. Sometimes they send a message, I reply back, and all that. So at that time, the concept was different, teaching was different, but then there are a lot of experimental skills, a lot of laboratory skills being developed. And since our department was new, from the beginning, we have to develop the tools for experiment in the lab. We have to make sure that the lab is made. When I take an electronic circuit lab, I have to provide instructions to students. These instructions were not there. So we prepared them using drawing sheets and we wrote with our hand, drawn these sketches and all that, and we placed them in the classroom so that students could refer to that in the laboratory class. So one has to be involved in the activity. If you are involved in the activity, it's really enjoyable and rewarding. The reward is not in terms of financial terms or other terms, but at least reward in terms of seeing your students succeeding well, people like you succeeding well, remembering you, and that all that.
Sir, so far I've been just asking about teaching, right? But there is so much to your career, right? There is you talked about PhD and so there is thesis supervision, there is research, publications, talks, journal reviews, inter-college collaborations, consulting, and now you're also an administrator for last 5-6 years. And you also talked about the role you played in transformation from REC to NIT. So there's so much. How do you sort of find time to do all of this? And how do you prioritize things? And I must add here that you have hundreds of publications, and I was looking at it. Many of those publications have so many citations. So these are all very high quality stuff. So it's not like just the quantity of it or the quantum of it, but really everything that you have done has been of high quality. And then there is so much. So how do you find time, and how do you prioritize, and what's the process like?
Okay, coming to the publication part, they're not very high quality, but they are okay, moderately better or a little better than moderate. But when you grow your PhD scholars, master students, you don't do everything by yourself. As you work in an industry, you have come to a certain level, you don't do things yourself. You guide people to do the work, and you get a credit for it or failure, discredit for a failure as well. Very similarly in teaching, we have PhD scholars, we have master students, we have undergraduate students. They do measure of the work, but we have to guide them to do the work. And if we are able to guide them well and the student is good, laborious, puts up the work, hard work, they succeed and we are happy with their success. As far as publication is concerned, I don't think I have a very strong publication record considering the NIT standards. There will be at least 20 or 30% faculty in NIT who would have more than me even. Yes, but yes, it's not on the lower side also. But again, I would attribute a lot of credit to my students in process of achieving that, because students are the ones through which we get these things done. Sometimes we start it with some thought and then they steer it to the right conclusion, right direction. I put it in that way.
I see, sir. I can understand that process. Even our final year project, I think probably you sort of explained the problem to us. You introduced us to some other professor in electrical department. You facilitated us getting a digital signal processor for us to sort of learn about that from reading its manual, and how can you implement program onto a DSP. Um, and then it was left to us to see where we can take that project, right? So you got us the data to sort of build model. It wasn't too much data, but then there was some data that was provided to us, right? So I can understand that process. But it depends a lot on the right students to sort of take that forward, and then create good sort of research and publication out of it. So what do you enjoy the most out of all these things? Which part do you enjoy the most? Is it teaching or is it something else?
Uh, that's a different difficult task. With time, you start to do multiple things. I don't think it's a you can solely say this I enjoy more or not, or that I enjoy more. I think it's a total package as such. You get a package, you don't get an individual thing. And everything has its merits and demerits. When I look at doing something for the students in terms of creating infrastructure, creating what you call is things like networking, server, and all that, you get a technical satisfaction that I could create some infrastructure, I could see how things are to be made and created. When you supervise your students, you feel that you have brought some amount of knowledge into the system, into the world, which is a small one, but it's a knowledge which could be a nano percent of it. But yes, it's a small part of the knowledge that is available in the world. And the biggest satisfaction you get is when people, students like you, succeed in their career, and many of them have been succeeding in their career, and they remember that yes, NIT Rourkela did something, these professors have shaped our career, and probably that is the biggest satisfaction you get through a job.
Sir,
I hope that answers you.
how has been the administrative experience in the last 5-6 years? Please tell us a little bit about that.
uh, if you're looking at the administrative experience, it has been quite different with me. And from the beginning, in fact, in the beginning of my service career, I did not do much of administrative responsibility. But working technically with different things had been I had that in my gene, I would say, because I worked in DRDO, did a lot of things there. So those things were there. Now, when we became NIT, Professor Sarangi joined as director. He asked me to be the professor in charge of campus network and computers and servers and all that. So that is where this activity started, and gave a it was like a hobby becoming a profession. So I like to see these technologies. I like to work with technologies. Thereby, I got a chance to implement those technologies at the campus, and things have been good. Things have worked well in that way. Then, if I look at the Rourkela administrative responsibilities at NIT level in the current millennium, it started with campus LAN and the server infrastructure, and in fact, if you look at it, Rourkela has one of the best campus LAN and server infrastructure among the
Changed our
institutes.
life, having that those computers in that one common room.
Hostel.
By the
Yes.
time we left, I think there were already talks about getting it to every room.
No, all the rooms at their campus land made.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yep.
Yeah.
It helps so much. Then we need not to walk to department
That's
to everything, right?
yes.
So that was great. Um, so sorry to cut. I cut you. You were trying to say something.
No, that's it.
Okay. What about IIT Vadodara as the director?
I think when you do something, there is a time when you need to take a decision. Basically, in an academic institution, professor is the highest within an organization. Then it so happened one day, it was around 2017. One day, Professor Sarangi gave me a call. He said that he received a call from someone and saying that there is a triple IT at Vadodara and they're looking for a director. And he said, you should apply for it. And he said, I have confidence you can do well, you should apply. Then I thought, okay, since he has said, let me apply. I had never thought it up till that time. And I applied for the position and I'm here. It's a new institute, still in the temporary campus, lot of limitations, but it's a small institute. The whole institute is like a department in Rourkela. Probably Rourkela electronics department is bigger than the institute here. But the challenges are different, environments are different. I think one has to take up bigger responsibility in the society with time and experience, and that is what has happened.
Okay. Okay. So what, when you get free time, from all of this, what do you like to do?
I think current work methodology and communication technologies have made our life very, very busy. Whether you are at home, suddenly an email comes from someone, you have to give a reply immediately, you have to pass on the message to someone to collect information. With change in technology, the response time have gone down. There is a time when a letter would come and it would say that reply back in 7 days.
Yep.
But today, a email comes and reply back by afternoon.
Yep.
So these things have made everyone busy. And the working hour of 8 hours has gradually become 12 hours.
Yep.
And people in larger cities even work while they drive or while they're traveling to their office. That's the time. But having all this, yeah, in the weekends, in the evening, I watch a bit of TV and do a bit of surfing, look at social
You
media
like to watch.
and all that.
So what do you like to watch on TV?
All sorts of things. I have little choice. Whatever is going on the TV, I watch that because the home department has the control on the TV.
Okay. Okay. So any closing remarks? It has been so nice getting so many.
I think this is important. We have to understand. If you look at the world today, it is changing fast. During our time, when we were graduating or we had graduated, the change in technology, the pace of change in technology was very slow. But with IT coming in, the pace of change in technology has become really high. Not only that, the demand of the industry from the graduates have also changed. So the industry demands have changed, the world has changed, and not only that, the demand of the industry today and 3 years from now would be largely different. That never happened. I think IT is one area which has made this possible. In the last 3 decades of my about 35 years of my job, because I moved into the job in 86, it's about 35 years. There have been large new opportunities. The opportunities for youth has gone up considerably. The opportunities have gone up. The education ecosystem has improved. More people are getting educated. Nevertheless, the expenses have also gone up. When I was a BTech student, we never heard of something called going abroad for studies. Had a few instances. I had a schoolmate. His brother had gone to Russia for a PhD program. And he would actually talk a lot about it because we thought that's a distant dream. Going to Russia for a PhD. So you are studying so much that you are going for a PhD and then going to a foreign country to do that. Something we are simply astonished to think. But then these things came to us and we have done it. With time, things change and this happens. The other part is the society is changing today. Economic standards and resources available have changed and our lives have become better. And we must make sure we will see that the changes will be more faster and more drastic. And as some people call it, these will be more disruptive.
Yeah.
Now, being in India, the youth has a large responsibility. When I say large responsibility, it is a responsibility for the family, for the country, and for the world. If we look at the world population demography, the population of Europe and China is aging.
Yep.
And China will have a time, maybe in 20 years' time, they'll be reaching a situation where they do not have enough people to feed the old ones.
Yep.
India is the country which is going to be the storehouse of energy and youth in the next decade, rather, not far away, next decade. So we have a lot of responsibility. And next to India, the country with the largest youth population will be USA. That may be surprising for many, but this is something that's true. Then you would have a few of the Asian countries, you would have a large population of youth. But whole of Europe, China, that's a large population chunk is going to be almost dependent on others because of the population demography. So being in India, we have a larger responsibility and youth have a still larger responsibility. It is their world and they have to shape it for the future. And I think our youth is also empowered and have the resources to make change in the world.
Yep.
That's important. And being in teaching, we are the people who are trying to make it possible through our little effort or little contribution for the society.
No, so that's so important. And sir, thanks again for giving us insight into this particular career path. I was lucky to have a professor like you, and I wish many more, bright minds who have a passion for making a difference, have a passion for teaching, um, come up and choose this career path, and then think the way you are thinking to sort of channelize this large youth population that we have to sort of take the country forward. And then we have, as you said, this demographic dividend right now, which needs to be utilized. And then teachers like you obviously play the biggest role in sort of training the youth for that purpose. And then I wish, there are more sort of people thinking like you and get into this. So thanks a lot, sir, for sharing your thoughts.
Thanks for this opportunity, Abhishek.
Thank you, sir. So I will stop the recording.
Sure.